This episode is called Interacting with the Movie. Hey guys, welcome to Spirits in the Theater. Remember to subscribe to this channel and like this video. Maybe wait till the end, but you're probably going to like it. Today we're going to talk about interacting with the movie. It's kind of a weird subject, but it is something worth talking about. Have you guys ever gone to the movie theater with somebody? I know it wasn't you, but someone you're with or some other person in the theater, when something happens and they're vocally reacting to the screen, whether they're upset or they're excited or they're scared, like you can hear them respond. I remember one time I had a roommate move in with me, and literally the next day, three of us went to the theater. We were brand new roommates, didn't know each other. We had met like 2 days prior. We went to go see a movie. I think it was called Prometheus. It was like a horror movie, which I didn't know. And at one point, like probably 20 minutes into the film, something gross happened on screen, and the guy next to me goes, "Oh, gross!" And we both were like super self-conscious and embarrassed because he was so vocal about it, and we wouldn't expect that from him. It wasn't like he was socially unaware, you know. He wasn't normally like disruptive, so it just felt so out of character for him. But I think he was just like really excited to having been in a new environment and having these like hopeful, you know, desires for change in his life, and so that was just coming from that exuberance. But it was such a jarring, funny moment. I remember thinking like, oh, this guy's kind of crazy. Oh, I didn't know that about him. What? You know? And now it's something that we laugh about. But it was also, I noticed there was something like compelling and invitational. Once I got past the embarrassment, I actually enjoyed how vocal he was. Growing up, my mom was that person. She would literally clap in the theater by herself and yell, "Yay!" when the bad guy would die or when the hero like did something, especially if there was like a vengeance or like a retaliation moment where we got justice or victory. My mom would clap in the movie theater, and my sisters and I would always be like, "Oh God, stop, Mom, stop, why are you doing that?" So embarrassing, right? But guess what? My mom was probably having more fun than most of us in that theater, potentially, right? I also remember, when I went and saw the most recent Aladdin movie, the live action that came out, after the Prince Ali scene where they're doing the parade in the street, and then Will Smith has that moment where he pauses and waits for the Sultan to respond. And then there's this climactic crescendo, and they all just explode, and there's color everywhere, and it's this big celebratory moment, which was so much fun. There was such a swell. There were several people in the theater for this movie that stood up and cheered with their hands in the air, clapping right after that moment. And we kind of like, first we're like, what are they doing? And then afterward it was like, wow, that was actually really fun. It actually increased the amount of celebration in the room in response to the moment on the screen. So hear me when I say this. I am not proposing that we be disruptive, that we get in the way of other people's experiences, that we impose our response on other people. I'm not saying that. However, when you go to a corporate experience, a communal thing where you're sitting in the same room with other people, realize that everyone has already said yes to an invitation for you to be part of that experience with them, whether they are conscious of that or not, or whether they even consent to acknowledging that or not. That is a social agreement we all make by gathering in one place to experience something together. Obviously, there are times where people are disrupting in a way that's not helpful, that's not constructive, and not adding to the experience. When people are texting on their phone, or you know, that bright screen, or they're talking loudly to their friend and they're getting in the way of your experience, or they're just like joking around and making a ton of noise, not fun. Or if there's a baby crying, like, I'm not talking about those things. But if you're having a genuine experience, an emotional response to what's going on in the movie, and there's an expression there, I would like to propose it might be more beneficial for you and the people around you to release that response. Do you ever go to like the opening night of a movie, especially like something like Star Wars or Avengers or something, and it's like this big moment, and you go and you see it, and at the end of the movie everyone in the theater claps? That only ever happens typically when it's like opening night for a big film, right? We all know like this is a big deal, there's so much hype and like anticipation, and so at the end of the film it feels appropriate for us to all just cheer and scream and clap, because there's this unity in the room. We all socially are aware like this is a big deal, and we're all coming together to have this experience, to acknowledge that together, right? So this is kind of an unspoken, unified response that is really rewarding at the end, and I always enjoyed it. At first, my initial judgment is like, oh, that's so cheesy. But then, because of the swell and the overwhelming majority of the room, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do it too. Let's clap, yay! And then as I say yes, I actually feel this swell of celebration and wanting to get into that experience with everybody. I think generally and genuinely, we all want to celebrate. We all want to express and contribute in that way. We don't want to be embarrassed. We don't want to draw attention to ourselves, but we do want the energy in the room to increase. We want that. And so as we're experiencing the story, when there's a response, like I remember some people on my team went and saw a horror movie together as an experiment, and there was a moment that like frightened everyone in the room, but one of the people on my team got so scared she got angry and she's like, no, and she threw her purse like ahead of her. I think she held onto the strap and just landed in front of her with someone on our team was sitting in front of her. They all laughed. It's like this funny moment we all recall and like remember and reminisce over, but it was like a visceral reaction where she just got mad at the movie because it scared her. Like those kind of responses actually add to the increased experience of everyone else around us. And so when you're scared, like I remember I went to see, I think Resident Evil 4. There's a lot of like ugly references to movies here, but we went and saw Resident Evil 4, which I don't recommend. It was a terrible movie. But within the first 5 minutes, there's like this scene where they're going through the streets of a city and like chaos and destruction, explosions, cars, whatever. It was crazy. And every like 3 seconds, there was a new explosive, like scary, jumpy moment. And I was there with like 5 other friends, and we all, for like a good probably 8 seconds, repeatedly in successive unity, we're like, ah! Whoa! Whoa! Ah! Repeatedly. And we, after that moment of like 8 seconds, it was over, and we were the only ones in the whole theater reacting like that. Once it was done, we looked at each other, kind of just realizing what had happened, and we busted up laughing because we all just were in that moment together. We didn't mean for that to happen. Nobody discussed that was the plan, and we laughed for like a good minute afterward because it was so unplanned and so rewarding to have that experience together. It was so bonding, you know? I remember one time I went and saw, what was it? Ice Age 2, I think, with a friend of mine. We were kind of dating. I wouldn't have called it that back then, but that's basically what was going on. I remember we both were like, okay, it's going to be like kind of a kid's movie, but let's have fun. And so we both decided we were going to laugh our heads off at anything we thought was funny. We were going to just give ourselves to it and really just like go. We weren't going to make it up, but we were going to go for it, right? And so I told her that, and she's like, okay. And I think she said yeah. And then once it started happening and something I thought was funny happened, I busted up laughing and I hammed it up and I pushed it more. I wasn't faking it. I just was definitely like adding extra to it than I normally would express. And she like was laughing with me, but then once I pushed it, she looked at me kind of like shocked and almost betrayed and like confused. And I looked at her and I kept laughing and like did it toward her, and then that made her laugh even more. And then the moments that were funny just continued to happen, where we started noticing even more things that were funny, right? And so we kept laughing bigger and bigger to the point where we were so obnoxious. But we got away with it because there were a bunch of kids in the movie and people were laughing. So us being so over the top wasn't disruptive. But then it got to the point where we were genuinely laughing so hard because of how ridiculous it was and how free it felt and how just like out of ourselves we were. It was so much fun. To this day, it's like one of my favorite memories of having gone and seen a movie together was like just pushing it over the top and laughing our heads off. We were crying. I think 3 different times in that movie, we were crying from laughing so hard. Like we couldn't breathe. It was so much fun. And you guys, like, if you think back, like, that's really fun. Like, that was a memorable experience, and I really enjoy Ice Age 2, the memory, based on the experience. I also remember that same person, we went and saw that King Kong movie that came out. Not the one that just came out, but the one before that. The King Kong movie with Naomi Watts in it. I remember there was one scene where King Kong, I think, was fighting 2 different T-Rexes at the same time, and he was holding the woman, this tiny woman. And in the midst of the fight, he would literally like toss her in the air and then like bash them and then catch her. And so she's flailing about between these gigantic monsters and in the wood, like in the jungle, and like her body is just flying everywhere. And at one point, it just I kind of had this moment where I stepped out of the movie and I was like, what is happening? Like, this is absurd. And then I saw her body fly across the screen again, and something in my brain just like snapped and I couldn't take it, and I started laughing so hard. And it wasn't a funny moment. Like, it was not like a comedic scene, and I'm laughing so hard, and my friend who was next to me was just like, what are you laughing about? And she's like starting to giggle because we've already kind of developed this culture with us where we're laughing at things, and I'm like trying to explain to her, like through like me gasping for air, trying to find words to explain that woman is flailing about. And once she caught an idea of what I was laughing about, she started laughing, because then it kind of got in her mind, she could see it too, and then we both lost it and were like gasping for air, crying, laughing so hard into 2 other scenes after that moment. It was so funny. And we were trying so hard not to make noise because we didn't want to disrupt people, but that made us laugh even harder. Anyway, my point in all this is, you guys, we want an experience. We're not there to just analyze a movie. We're not there to just like watch something quietly and just like move on unaffected. We're there to experience the thing. You know what I mean? It's not just this thing coming at you. You have something to bring to the table. The same is true when you're listening to a public speaker. Like, when you respond to them, you actually contribute energy to the exchange, and you allow for the increase of what is going on in the room to happen. It gets to be bigger. We want that in our movie-going experience. So don't make anything up. Don't disrupt other people's experiences. But when you have a genuine reaction, feel free to demonstrate that, to express it, to give it voice. You know what I mean? People might not react positively right away, maybe, but I promise you, if it's coming from a genuine place and it's not disrupting the flow of the movie, it's not inappropriate for what was trying to be conveyed, it actually adds to the experience of everybody else, and you invite them into a more visceral experience, which we all actually want. We're going to the theater for an experience. That's why we paid the movie, right? So, you guys, I want to give you a challenge. The next time you go to a movie theater and you watch a movie, be mindful of your experience and maybe share some of that. Take a risk and like put some vocal behind it, you know, like just push it a little bit, like see what happens. Fun little experiment there. And remember, you guys, when you're watching a movie, you're never alone. Subscribe to this channel, like this video. Any funny stories on like experiences in theaters where either you or someone around you or someone you were with is reacting to the experience? I'd love to hear those things. Would you share them in the comments below?